I ghosted my boyfriend of 3 years because I was scared of commitment. 6 months later, he's engaged to someone else, and I can't stop checking her Instagram every single day. I told my husband I needed space and moved in with my sister for a while. 2 months later, he filed for divorce, and now I realize the space I wanted was never the problem. I broke up with my fiancé to make my ex jealous. It's been 8 months, and he's never been happier without me, and now my new relationship is falling apart because of it. I broke up with her because I thought someone better was waiting for me out there. A year later, I'm still single, she's happily married, and I just found out she's pregnant. Hi, I'm Maya. On this channel, we analyze real relationship cases, cheating suspicions, red flags, am I overreacting, questions. Today we're looking at 4 stories with a different twist. These aren't about someone else's red flags. They're about decisions people made themselves and the regret that followed. Walking away to test someone, pulling back to feel safe, chasing something better that wasn't actually there. In each one we'll ask, was this really about the other person, or was something else going on underneath? If you have a relationship situation you'd like me to analyze anonymously in a future video, you can send it to the email in the description. Please remove real names, private details, and anything that could identify you or another person. This channel is not professional therapy. It's for relationship analysis and discussion, but your story may help someone else feel less alone. Now let's get started with our first story today. I ghosted my boyfriend of 3 years because I was scared of commitment. 6 months later, he's engaged to someone else, and I can't stop checking her Instagram every single day. I dated my boyfriend for 3 years. When he started talking about moving in together, I panicked and just disappeared. No explanation, no breakup conversation. I blocked his number and told mutual friends it wasn't working out. 6 months later, I heard he's engaged to someone new. I've looked at her Instagram almost every day since. I tell myself I'm just curious, but honestly, seeing him happy makes me feel sick. Did I throw away something good because I was scared, and now I'm just watching someone else get it? On the surface, this looks like a simple case of someone getting cold feet. Moving in together is a big step, and not everyone is ready for it. People back out of relationships all the time when things start to feel too real, too fast. So far, that part isn't unusual at all, but the way she ended things is what makes this case stand out. She didn't say, "I'm not ready." She didn't say, "I need to talk about this." She disappeared. She blocked his number, told their friends a vague story, and gave him no real explanation for why 3 years together suddenly ended overnight. Here's what's really going on underneath this. When someone ghosts a long-term partner instead of having a hard conversation, it's often not really about the other person. It's about avoiding discomfort. Talking about fears, doubts, or not being ready requires vulnerability. Disappearing requires none of that. It's a way of controlling the ending without having to sit in the difficult feelings that come with it. The problem is, this kind of exit doesn't just protect the person doing it. It also takes something away from the other person. He didn't get the chance to understand what happened, to ask questions, or even to grieve the relationship properly. One day they were planning a life together, and the next day, he simply didn't exist to her anymore. That's not just ending a relationship. That's removing someone's ability to process what happened to them. And now 6 months later, she's checking his fiancé's Instagram almost daily. That detail says a lot. If this were truly about not being ready for that relationship, seeing him happy with someone else might bring relief or at least neutrality. Instead, it seems to bring something closer to jealousy, or maybe grief for a version of her own life she gave up. Is this a red flag or a gray area? On its own, getting scared before a big commitment is human. That part is a gray area, something almost everyone can relate to. Fear of moving in together, fear of this is it now, fear of losing yourself in a shared life. None of that makes someone a bad person. But the method she used to handle that fear is where this shifts. Ghosting a partner of 3 years without any conversation isn't really about commitment anxiety anymore. It's about how she handles hard emotions in general. If this is a pattern, if past relationships also ended with disappearing instead of talking, that's a signal worth paying attention to. Because the issue isn't, I wasn't ready to move in. The issue is, when things get hard, I disappear instead of communicating, and that pattern will follow her into every future relationship, including the one she might build next. There's also something worth gently naming here, the daily Instagram checking. that's not really about him anymore. That's about her own unresolved feelings, about the choice she made, about what she gave up, and possibly about a fear that she made a mistake she can't take back. Watching someone else's life from a distance, especially someone you used to share a future with, can sometimes be less about missing them and more about missing the life you imagined for yourself. In this case, the boundary that needs to be set isn't with someone else. It's with herself. Something like, I think I'm scared of being truly seen in a relationship. And instead of talking about that fear, I run from it. That's something I need to understand about myself before I bring it into my next relationship. This isn't about reaching out to the ex or trying to explain herself 6 months later. That ship has likely sailed, and reopening it could cause more harm than good for both people. This is about recognizing the pattern before it repeats itself. Sometimes the people we can't stop watching from a distance aren't the people we miss. They're a mirror for the choices we're still trying to make peace with. Do you think she's grieving him or grieving the life she walked away from? Let me know in the comments. Now let's look at the second case. I told my husband I needed space and moved in with my sister for a while. 2 months later, he filed for divorce, and now I realize the space I wanted was never the problem. After 10 years of marriage, I felt suffocated. Not because of anything he did, I just felt like I'd lost myself somewhere along the way. I told him I needed space and moved in with my sister for a few weeks. He didn't fight it, just said okay. 2 months later, he served me divorce papers. I was shocked. I thought space would help me figure things out. But now I think what I actually needed was to talk to him, not leave him. Did I just throw away my marriage to avoid a conversation I was scared to have? At first glance, on the surface, this seems like a fairly common story. 10 years into a marriage, someone starts to feel like they've lost themselves. They ask for space, move out temporarily, and use that time to think. None of that, on its own, is alarming. Needing space in a long marriage is something a lot of people experience at some point. What's surprising here isn't the request for space, it's what happened after. She expected this to be a pause. He treated it as an ending. And now she's left wondering how something she saw as figuring things out became the reason her marriage is over. But the real issue here is what the word space actually meant. For her, I need space meant I need time to think. But for him, on the receiving end, I need space, especially when it comes with packing a bag and moving into another home, can land very differently. It can sound like I'm stepping out of this marriage, even if that's not what was meant. Here's the deeper issue: 10 years of marriage, and the actual problem, whatever was making her feel suffocated, was never named out loud. She didn't say, I feel like I've lost myself, and I need us to talk about what our life looks like. She said, I need space, packed a bag, and left him to interpret that silence however he wanted to. And he did. For 2 months, while she was using the distance to reflect, he was likely using it to come to his own conclusions. Possibly that the marriage was already over in her mind, and this was just the slow exit. By the time she realized what she actually needed was connection, not distance, he had already moved toward separation. This alone, asking for space in a long marriage, isn't a red flag. People need room to breathe sometimes, and that's healthy when it's communicated clearly. When these factors come together, this becomes more complicated. First, the lack of a real conversation before leaving. No, here's what I'm struggling with, just I need space. Second, the physical act of moving out, which sends a much stronger signal than words alone. And third, 2 months of silence on the actual issue, while both people quietly drew their own conclusions in opposite directions. This isn't really a story about a marriage that failed because love ran out. It's a story about 2 people who stopped talking long before she packed that bag, or Hanau and Nessen Nerfar. And I need space was the first honest thing she said in a long time, even if it came out sideways. The tragedy is that it was heard as a goodbye, when it might have been a cry for help. A possible boundary clause that could be used in this case is, and this is the conversation that probably should have happened before any bags were packed. I'm not happy right now, and I don't fully know why. I don't want to leave you. I want to figure this out with you. Can we talk about what's actually going on instead of me just disappearing for a while? Saying this is harder than packing a bag, but it gives the other person a chance to respond to the real problem, instead of reacting to what looks like an exit. Sometimes I need space is the truth wearing a disguise, and the people we love can only respond to what we actually show them, not what we secretly mean. Do you think he overreacted by filing for divorce? Or was 2 months of silence answer enough for him? Let me know in the comments. Now let's hear another case. I ended my 8-year relationship, convinced my ex would realize what he lost and come running back once I moved on. He didn't. 8 months later, he's thriving. New hobbies, a promotion, genuinely happy. Meanwhile, I got engaged to someone new, but I keep comparing him to my ex and picking fights over nothing. Last week, my fiancé said, "Your mind is still somewhere else," and brought up calling off the wedding. Am I sabotaging the one good thing I have left because I never actually let go of the last one? At first glance, this looks like a story about someone whose plan backfired. She ended a long relationship expecting a certain reaction, that her ex would chase her, realize his mistake, and come back. Instead, he moved on completely and seems happier than ever. That part, on its own, might just feel like a painful surprise. But the real problem isn't that her plan didn't work. It's what's happening now in her current relationship as a result of that unresolved chapter. She's engaged to someone new, but she's picking fights over nothing and comparing him to the person she left. Her fiancé has already noticed that her mind isn't fully present. The real problem isn't here. It's actually her past relationship. It's what that relationship represented to her, and the fact that it ended on her terms, but not on her actual emotional terms. She left expecting a specific outcome, him chasing her, validating that she still mattered to him. When that didn't happen, it didn't just disappoint her, it left a question unanswered. A question about her own worth, about whether she made the right choice, about what she actually wanted versus what she thought she wanted. And now that unanswered question is living inside her new relationship. The fights over nothing are rarely actually about nothing. They're often a release valve for something else entirely. If she's constantly comparing her fiancé to her ex, even unconsciously, that comparison is filling space that should belong to the relationship she's actually in. Her fiancé's comment, "Your mind is still somewhere else," wasn't an accusation pulled from nowhere. People can usually sense when a partner's attention, energy, or emotional availability is divided, even if they can't always name exactly why. Could she be innocent? This is just normal adjustment after a long relationship. To some extent, yes, it's common to carry comparisons into a new relationship for a little while, especially after 8 years with someone. That alone wouldn't be alarming. But when these factors come together, this moves further into red flag territory. First, the original breakup wasn't really a clean ending. It was a strategy with an expected outcome that never happened. Second, 8 months later, she's still tracking her ex's life closely enough to know about his hobbies and his promotion. Third, the conflict in her current relationship is escalating to the point where her fiancé is now considering calling off the wedding. This isn't really a story about whether her ex is happy or not. It's a story about someone who left one relationship without ever fully closing that emotional door and is now standing at the entrance of a new one, with one foot still outside. A possible boundary clause that could be used in this case is, and again, this is mostly a conversation with herself before it can be a conversation with her fiancé. "I think I left my last relationship looking for proof that I mattered, and I never got that proof. I need to deal with that on my own instead of letting it show up as tension in this relationship." If she's not able to do that work, the honest and respectful thing, both to herself and to her fiancé, might be to pause the wedding planning until she can show up fully present, rather than moving forward while still emotionally tied to someone else's life. Sometimes we don't fight with the person in front of us because of what they did. We fight with them because of what someone else didn't do. Do you think she should pause the wedding to work through this? Or is this something that can be solved while moving forward together? Let me know in the comments. Now let's look at a different situation. We were together for 4 years, and honestly, things were good. But I kept thinking, what if there's someone better out there? So I ended it, telling her I needed to find myself. A year later, I'm still single, still searching for that something better. Yesterday, a mutual friend mentioned she got married last spring, and she's pregnant. I felt a wave of regret I wasn't ready for. Did I throw away a good thing chasing a fantasy that was never real to begin with? At first glance, this is a story a lot of people will recognize, even if they've never said it out loud. 4 years into a good relationship, he started wondering if something better existed out there. Not because anything was wrong. By his own admission, things were good. Just a quiet, persistent what if. So he ended it, not with a specific reason, not because of a fight or a betrayal, but with the classic line, "I need to find myself." A year later, he's still single, still looking for that undefined something better, and he just found out she's married and expecting a child. The real problem here is something that's easy to miss. He ended a good relationship not because of a real specific problem, but because of a feeling. A feeling that there might be something better somewhere else. That feeling is incredibly common, and it's also incredibly unreliable because it's based on comparing a real relationship with all its real imperfections to an imagined one that has none. I need to find myself is one of those phrases that sounds meaningful, but often hides something simpler: uncertainty, restlessness, or fear of settling down, dressed up as a journey of self-discovery. And here's a year later, has he actually found himself? By his own account, no. He's still single, still searching, still chasing the same vague idea that led him to leave in the first place. Meanwhile, she didn't spend that year searching for something better. She moved forward, built a life, got married, and is now expecting a child. The contrast between her path and his isn't a coincidence. It's the difference between someone who chose to build something real and someone who walked away from something real to chase something that was never clearly defined. This, on its own, wanting more from life, wanting growth, wanting to make sure you're making the right choice, none of that is a red flag. Everyone deserves to feel confident about their relationship. But if it keeps happening, here's where this becomes a pattern worth examining. What if there's someone better becomes the reason for ending every relationship that's actually going well. The problem probably isn't the relationships. It might be a deeper discomfort with commitment itself, a belief that choosing one person means closing every other door, and that closing doors feels like loss, even when what's behind the chosen door is genuinely good. This case is also a quiet warning for anyone watching who relates to that what-if feeling. The fantasy of someone better doesn't disappear once you leave a relationship. It just follows you into the next phase of being single. Except now there's no good thing to compare it to anymore. A year of searching produced no answers, just more searching. In this case, the boundary sentence could be as follows. Again, mostly directed inward. I think I left a good relationship because I was afraid that choosing it meant settling. But a year later, I realized something better was never a real place. It was just a way of avoiding the discomfort of fully committing to something real. This isn't about reaching out to her, she's moved on, and reopening that door now would only serve his own unresolved feelings, not her life. This is about understanding the pattern, so it doesn't repeat with the next good thing that comes along. Sometimes something better isn't a person waiting somewhere else, it's an excuse we use to avoid choosing the good thing that's already in front of us. Do you think he's actually learned something from this? Or is he likely to repeat the same pattern in his next relationship? Let me know in the comments. So, 4 very different stories, but underneath they all share something in common. A breakup driven by ghosting instead of talking. A request for space that was really a cry for connection. A plan to make someone jealous that backfired into a new relationship falling apart. And someone who left a good thing chasing a feeling that never had an address. In every one of these cases, the ending wasn't really about the other person. It was about something the person leaving hadn't fully worked through. Fear, doubt, pride, or restlessness, and that unresolved piece followed them long after the relationship ended. If you're going through a situation similar to one of these, or you have your own relationship story you'd like me to analyze anonymously, you can send it to the email in the description. Please keep it anonymous. No real names, addresses, or identifying personal details. I may use selected stories in future videos to analyze relationship dynamics, patterns, and red flags. This is not therapy, and I can't provide personal crisis counseling, but sometimes seeing a situation clearly is the first step toward understanding what's really happening. Which case hit closest to home for you? I'm Maya. See you in the next one.